Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster of SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and we are here today for another one of our conversations at home. I do want to remind everyone that we are continuing to raise funds through our COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund for SAG-AFTRA members who are currently out of work due to all of the closed productions. So please check out the link below this video and consider donating if you're able to support in any way at all. I'm really excited today to be joined by Peter Facinelli, who's been in so many wonderful films and also is an amazing writer, director, and producer. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to, I know that you're in the midst of a journey with your latest film, Hour of Lead, and just wanted to ask how that journey has been, because you started out premiering it at film festivals and, now everything's kind of gradually closed down. So how has that been for you?
Well, for me, we had distribution, luckily. So, I wasn't really going to go the festival route just because sometimes it's just better if you have distribution to just release it. But, some friends of mine started the Mammoth Film Festival, and they had seen the film, and they asked for, if they could screen it there. And so I thought it'd be a great place to kind of, have the world premiere there. And then we were supposed to launch in May, but it got pushed back now to September, October because of the virus. So, it's been a long journey, but thankfully it really hasn't messed with our distribution at all. If we didn't have distribution, I think it would be a lot harder, because then all these festivals that now people go to get distribution are, having to close down or postpone. So it does make it more difficult for films. But for ours, luckily, we have distribution, so we'll still be able to come out later this year, hopefully.
That's so great. I'm so happy to hear that for the journey of the film. And obviously you've spent a lot of time at film festivals in all of your various roles and a lot of Comic-Con events as well. And, as we're seeing all of that pushback, what are some of the things about those spaces that you're really going to miss the connectivity of in the meantime, and that you're looking forward to reconvening once we're able to be back in spaces together again?
I feed off of being able to be social. Like, I do better in like a yoga class than doing yoga at home. Like, I do better at a spin class than I do spinning at home. So like, it's been an adjustment to try to find a new connectivity within yourself, so that usually people are, I get so much energy from people. But now that I'm at home, I have to find that energy within, which has been a process.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're all kind of navigating a little bit. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the writing process with the film. For people who haven't seen it yet, it's about a couple who are taking a camping vacation at an RV park, and then their young daughter goes missing, and just that journey of what that looks like as they start looking for her and looking for answers. And there's a lot of kind of like mystery around it, and you really build that suspense really beautifully. So I was curious, when you were mapping out the script, if you really thought about the overall arc and journey of that story first, or if you really kind of started from a standpoint of the characters.
Well, for me, the way I write is it lives in my head for a long time. And then I flesh it out over and over in my mind until eventually I have to sit down and write it, and then it kind of pours itself out. And this script I wrote, usually I write fairly quickly because I've been living with it for so long in my head. So like Hour of Lead, I wrote in 3 weeks. A film that I did called Lucy's, I wrote that in about 2.5, 3 weeks as well. But it sounds fast, but I was living with those characters in my head for like a year, or maybe longer, where you get like a seed of an idea, and then you kind of build on it, and then you kind of flesh it out, and then you're kind of wondering like, well, what would happen if this happened, or what would happen if that happened, until it's kind of like at a boiling point, and then it kind of like just starts flowing, and then you're like, okay, I got to get it out, and my fingers are moving faster than my mind, But this particular seed of a story, it started. I used to have an RV, so I go RVing with my kids. And I pulled up to an RV park once, and there was some gunshots, and I went to the front desk, and he said, "Oh, there's a prison nearby. 1 or 2 gunshots is okay. If you hear 3 or 4, like, come to the front desk or hide." So I started thinking, well, geez, what if somebody escaped prison, or what if your daughter goes missing amongst, this beautiful backdrop of this beautiful woods, and it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, and what would happen, to the parents, like, what would you go through, and that sense of loss, and that sense of paranoia of like, who has your daughter, and how far would you go to get her back? And all those questions were coming into my mind because of that. And then I kind of, it blossomed into this story, Our Bled.
Yeah. And the film also deals a lot with the idea of trauma and both grief. And you really use those 5 stages of grief as kind of a roadmap for the film, and all the different, it really flows the scenes together once you know what the actual story is and how it all came to be. So how did you think about that as like the overarching theme and the way that you wanted to capture that, both with your cast through their performances, but also a lot of the post-production elements as well in setting the tone?
Well, the stages of grief were always a big part of it for me. I remember studying in college Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grieving and loss, and so that always resonated with me and stuck with me, and how you can bounce back and forth between the 5 stages until you finally come upon acceptance. And so that was definitely a part of this story, of the pulse of the story, I would say, for the parents. And everything was kind of built around that. And then as far as working with the actors, I had such great actors, Thomas and Jane and Anne Heche, Thomas Jane and Anne Heche, that they were so excited to bring so much to the table, and so for me, it was a real treat working with them. And there were times, every actor works differently. So like, with Anne, she feels things, so sometimes I wouldn't even have to say anything. I just go over to her and be like, and she'd be like, okay, got it. I wouldn't even, like, we had this unspoken communication. And then with Thomas, it was more of an intellectual process and more thought, based. But being an actor myself, I love actors. I've worked with so many, so it's fun for me to be the eyeball that's watching every moment, that watches every flicker of their eye, that because a lot of directors don't see what actors are doing on a subtle scale, and I feel like I could see it, and so I think I gained their trust when I would say that moment where you looked away, that was powerful, so there's small details that I could see that maybe a director that hadn't acted wouldn't see, so I feel like there was just a language that I could speak to the actors that hopefully got better performances, stronger performances. I've always wanted that with directors, like, can you push me? Can you, I can only think of so much as an actor, and you always want that director that's asking that question that's going to push you this much more and that much more every time. So when I do get to work with directors like that, I find it such a treat, as an actor. Some actors don't like notes because they feel like they're doing something wrong, but I love the collaboration of acting and directing, and like working together to build something, and really push each other too. As an actor pushes directors to think even more, as well. So I really enjoy the process of working with actors, and I hope to be able to do it again.
Yeah, and I've also heard you talk in the past about how you really gravitate towards directors that instill a confidence in you as an actor, and that's their approach. And I was interested in what some of the ways are that you've experienced that as an actor, and how you wanted to carry that forth on your film sets and this and other movies that you've directed.
Well, being an actor is very vulnerable. So you're sitting there emotionally exposed, and you're trying things, and like, whenever you have a director come over and they make fun of your performance, or they say, what was that? Or like, then all of a sudden I find actors lock up because they're afraid to be free. They're afraid to try something because they make it laughed at, At a certain point in your career, you stop, even if you start to learn to listen to your own instincts, because sometimes you realize directors aren't always right. So like, I take it with a grain of salt sometimes if they make fun or review of something, or don't word something that other people would find offensive. I try to look at, okay, well, what are they trying to get to? Like, what are they trying to get me to do? You know what I mean? And I try to not pay attention to how they're approaching it. But the approach is really important, because you want to be gentle with your actors. You want to be able to instill that confidence in them, because you want them to go the extra mile, the extra distance, and to be able to really push themselves to places where they might be uncomfortable, But if you approach them the wrong way, then all of a sudden they're like scared animals, and they don't want to, they won't give it to you. So Definitely how you approach things are important, and how I talk to the actors are important. And even like if they're doing something that's completely different than what I expected, to go, okay, there might be a valid point in what they're doing. Let me think about it. And then if I disagree, then I'll go in there and say, okay, we got that on that take. Let's try this, so they don't think or feel like their ideas weren't heard, or they weren't, shut down. I mean, if an actor feels like, oh, great, I did what I wanted to do and I have a take of that, then I can try something else and I could try whatever, you know what I mean? But if I feel like what I'm trying to do isn't heard or listened to or shut down, it's hard for me to want to try something else, because then you're fighting with an idea that you have, you know what I mean? So the beauty about filmmaking is there's always a take two, there's a take three, There's a director I worked with, McG, and he was really good at that. Like, he would make you feel like everything you did was incredible, and you would end up doing takes various ways and ways that you never even thought of, because he was always like your biggest cheerleader and always encouraging you to like push further, but it was something that was fun, and it was like two people collaborating, and so definitely things that I've found that I liked as an actor, I try to use as a director as well. And but every actor is different. I mean, it's really like, it's almost like therapy, because every actor has a different process. So there's no one process or one way to approach an actor. Like if I went to Anne and I tried to intellectually speak about a scene, she'd be like, okay, well, what kind of feeling do you want me to? Because she's all about feeling, you know what I mean? So once you know that about her, then you go there with like, this is how I need it to feel, or the tone of it. And then you let her do her thing. So you kind of got to figure out how an actor approaches things, and you get to know them, how they work fairly quickly, just by conversations with them. I had one actor who would question a lot of the scenes, and I knew that about him. So I sat down and I went through the entire script, every word. And if he had a question about it or said, I don't know if my character would say that, I'd say, okay, well, what would you say? And then sometimes I would make compromises, or I would say, well, you have to say that because the audience needs to hear this. And there would be a compromise on that. But it's a lot easier to do in a rehearsal space before filming than when you get on set and you're sitting there having a 30-minute discussion about one line, which just kills your whole day, because you only have a certain amount of time during the day and you're always racing a clock. So I find the more that you get out of the way during rehearsal or off camera or before you're filming, the smoother stuff goes, because there's always going to be stuff like the camera is broken, or the lens is on the other side of the RV park and you got to wait for 30 minutes for someone to bring it, or a piece of equipment doesn't work, or something got stuck in the mud, or there's always going to be something that slows the process down. But as much as you can mitigate, it helps to move the day forward.
Yeah, and because you were mentioning, the speed at which you're filming a lot of the time as well, I was curious, kind of from a directorial standpoint, what some of the really important things were for you that you wanted to do in terms of preparing yourself every single day before you walked onto set to make sure that you could communicate exactly what you saw as your vision and execute it in the way that you wanted to both your cast and your crew.
Yeah. Well, you always, listen, no matter what level of filmmaking, whether you have $60 million or $300,000 or $100,000, no matter what level of money you have, you always want more time and more money. This particular film came together like late in the year, and we were racing a clock to finish before Christmas, and then we didn't get the financing when we needed it, so it got pushed because of the state rebate. So we had to move states. We were in the middle of like pre-production, and we realized the state wasn't going to give us the rebate, so we had to move states. So I lost like 12 days of pre-production, and when I landed in the new state, Alabama, they rushed everything through, and then were able to help us. And but I literally had like 3 or 4 days of prep, which usually you get like 2 weeks of prep. And so 3 to 4 days is kind of insane. Like, to prep a whole movie in 3 to 4 days. So we were always kind of racing. We were always kind of behind the 8 ball in that sense. But I had a crew that really worked hard, worked together, and somehow we pulled it off. But I remember thinking, I wish I had more time in prep. So I tried to do as much as I could in the 3 or 4 days of prep that I had, which was mostly like trying to figure out my camera shots, as much of a game plan as I could have, because it helps. You can't, every second counts. So if I'm sitting there trying to figure out where to put the camera, that's minutes lost. You know what I mean? Always have to have a plan A, a plan B, and then hopefully a plan C. And then, sometimes you just got to wing it too, when all the plans kind of go out the window. We had first day of filmmaking, we were doing Steadicam, and the Steadicam just wasn't working. Like the machinery was, the monitor kept going out. The shots were, the frame kept going up and down. Like it was just a simple walk. And the camera just wasn't, the equipment wasn't up to par. And I remember thinking, well, Jesus, I have all my shots today are Steadicam. So if I can't get this one walk down, which is taking 10 takes, and now we're already behind schedule, I'm stuck. Like, what do I do? And so the DP said, well, why don't we go handheld? And I thought, well, you can't just go handheld, because if you go handheld for no reason, it looks like a really cheap movie. And also, like, it just doesn't make sense, because this part of the movie needed to be kind of smooth, And so you don't want to go to fix it with something that doesn't make sense for the film, So then I was like, well, do you have like dolly tracks? We could put it on a dolly. It's really smooth, and we'll do a shot like that. And he said, no, the dollies come tomorrow. So I was like, all right, well, you got sticks and a slider? And he said, yeah. I said, we'll go with that, because that, we can have the actors move in the frame, and we'll just kind of keep the camera kind of steady and smooth. And it's the shot where Thomas is, he's hooking up the RV. And I wanted to go handheld because I wanted to go with him while he's, hooking up the RV and moving about. And I thought, I just had to plant the camera, and I let Thomas with the blocking do all the work. And then I had the camera kind of moving smoothly, and it worked, but it was like literally you have seconds to come up with a plan C that you never would have thought of, because I never would have thought, the equipment would not work, So it's that kind of pressure, though, that you hate and love, because your adrenaline is just always like going. I think I slept like 4 hours a day for like 20 days straight. Like, you're not sleeping, you're barely eating, like you're always thinking, and you're always trying to make your day, figure out how to get the shot, or like you don't want to compromise the film, so you're working really hard not to compromise that. But it's that adrenaline rush, that pressure. It's like, it's like climbing Mount Everest. It's like, people climb mountains because they get that adrenaline rush that makes you feel like you could, move mountains.
Yeah.
You had to.
I was just thinking it's so funny the way that you're talking about how the amount of pre-production time ended up being so small, because I know your first directorial debut, Breaking and Exiting, you actually jumped into that project just a week before it was set to start shooting, because it had another director attached. And I was just curious kind of how making that first film really served as a great boot camp, because it forced you to dive right in at the deep end.
Yeah, I mean, I had a week on that film, Breaking and Exiting, and that film was a very small budget. And I thought a week was like miraculous. I was like, wow, I prepped that film in a week. I mean, that's incredible. So when I found out I had like 3 to 4 days to prep a movie that was like maybe 10 times the budget of my first film, I was like, this is going to be damn near impossible. Like, I don't even have costumes. I have no cameras haven't even arrived yet. The actors are here, and I have like, no sets. Like, what do you do? This is like going to be a disaster. And then somehow everybody rallies, this group of people, this crew, it's like going to war, really. It's like this, these soldiers just come together and go to battle every day and make it happen. And you're just like, I was amazed that we were able to pull that off, honestly.
Yeah. I also, in addition to writing, directing, and acting, you're also producing, and you started your own production company several years ago. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that and why that felt like a really important thing for you to do as an actor, to have more creative autonomy in your career. And, and also I think because you've used it as a space to acquire content, but also develop your own content as well, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think, for me as an actor, people always tout actors as like, the celebrity on the poster, and like you're always like screaming their names at the red carpets, but they really, actors have the least amount of power, really, because like, the director and the producers are casting the film, so they could go with George Clooney, they could go with Tom Cruise, like who knows, they're both great, like, so who do you go with? So for me, being able to have a space to go, okay, I was reading a lot of scripts that I just thought, well, how is this getting made? Or like, why are they making this? Or I've seen this story before. It feels like a regurgitation of this movie. And I thought, well, what kind of stories would I want to tell? And if they're making this, then maybe I could make something, and so I started writing more out of like necessity to want to tell different stories than I was getting. If I was getting all the stories that I wanted to tell, I wouldn't have to go and write them, because I'd just be like, oh, this is great. I'll do this in March, and I'll do this in June. I'll do this in August. I was having a hard time finding scripts that I would be passionate about, or finding stories that, were new and fresh. And I just thought, well, some of these scripts are just not good and they're being made, so maybe I could write something better. And so I ended up writing, and I've written 3 or 4 scripts now. I've made three out of 4, I think. But I feel blessed to be able to tell those stories. For me, if someone said, well, what do you do for a living? I like to say storyteller instead of actor, because like as an actor, I tell stories through a character. And as a writer, you write and create the world of that story. And as a director, it's the ultimate form of storytelling, because you're taking the blueprints and you're actually building the house, and every frame is your choice, from like what actors you want in the movie, what music you want in the movie, what cuts you want, done. Everything it falls on you. But in that sense, you're the one telling the story. Everybody else is part of that, as a team to kind of like lead in helping me tell that story. So, I guess I wanted more of a space to be able to have more control and to tell stories that I wanted to tell, as opposed to just wait for scripts, and hope for the best, And there's still like stuff that I do that I haven't written or produced. But, now I have the choice of both, I don't have to wait around and wait on other people's stuff.
Yeah. From an acting standpoint, I also love that there was a point in your career when you were between projects where you decided to actually go back and take an acting class. And then that was something that you kind of continued to do a bit between projects. So I was curious in the way that really like reinvigorated and reconnected you to what you fell in love with acting to begin with, and the way that it's helped you continue to hone your craft throughout your career.
I still do, whenever I'm between projects, I try to jump in a class. And, for me, it's more, it's invigorating to be around people that have the passion, because sometimes I've been doing it for 25 years and you just kind of lose a little bit of that passion, because it's hard. You're always pushing boulders uphill, and you're trying to get stuff made, or you're trying to get a part on this, and like, oh, you didn't get that, but you got this. And so it becomes so exhausting. And sometimes I'm like, do I really want to do this anymore? You lose a little bit of the passion after so many years. And then I'll jump in a class and all these people are so excited, and it's just infectious. Then you're like, okay, that's why. Now I remember why. And you that passion just gets reinvigorated.
I think your computer just froze. I'm not sure if you can.
That I hadn't to go back out. It's kind of like going to a gym and just kind of flexing muscles and working out. And the greatest thing about class is you can fail in class. Like I could try things and do things that I normally wouldn't, and it might be completely wrong, but it's okay. You know what I mean? You want to be wrong because that's how you grow,
Yeah.
So, it's really, it's all an art. And when I was younger, I used to say it's kind of like martial arts. You're never going to learn it in one lifetime. You can learn up to a certain point, but it takes like many lifetimes to learn like the being the best martial artist. Like, and with acting, sometimes the more I know, the worse it is. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, when I don't know what I'm doing, it feels like the work is better, because you never want to feel like you have such a hold of it that you're just not, that hunger's lost. You know what I mean? People are like, do you still get nervous when you're right before a take? And I say, if I'm not nervous before a take, then I'm not doing the right movie. You know what I mean? Because like, you want to have those butterflies in your stomach, that it's like, it's not nerves that are locking you up, but nerves that are excitement, like a horse at the gate, ready to go, and if you don't have that, then like, you're just kind of phoning it in, you know what I mean? So yeah, I try to find projects. Whenever my agents are like, hey, what do you want to do next? I'm always like, well, I want to try to find something I haven't done before. I don't want to do another character that I've done, or a movie similar to what I've done. And sometimes it's close and there's varying degrees, but like, they're actors that they know, they are so in tune with themselves, and they play themselves all the time, and people love them. And if they don't play them, they get mad at them. All of a sudden, like, they do an accent, they're like, why'd they do that? That's like, they just want to see them, And for me, the fun of acting is being able to step into somebody else's shoes, become somebody different, and explore somebody else's life. So like, if all my characters were the same, I'd be bored, So if you look at like Can't Hardly Wait, Mike Dexter, and you put that next to Carlisle Cullen, and you put that next to like, Coop from Nurse Jackie, they're all different people, and that's the fun of it for me, is to be able to find those different people within myself.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about auditioning, because you've been on both sides of that spectrum, and kind of what you found for yourself as an actor that makes you feel really comfortable and grounded when you walk into that room. But then when you're on the other side as a producer and as a director, what you like to do to create a comfortable and welcoming space for people when they step in for you.
Well, I must have apologized to every actor that came in and read, because as soon as they walked in the door, I said, listen, I know this is god awful, because I've been on your side. So that said, like, let's just play and have fun, and there is no right or wrong, and let's just make it about the work of acting. Don't worry about trying to get the job. You know what I mean? And if somebody said that to me when I walked in the door, I would feel like like a breath of fresh air, and just go, okay, now I could just play, and there's no pressure here. And if I get the role, great. And if I don't, it's fun. You know what I mean? Because when you have loose actors and they're having fun, you get better work out of them, And a lot of times I've been in the audition process, and I've come in, they barely talk to you, they don't ask you any questions. You don't talk to them. You start the scene. They say thank you. You say thank you. You walk out the door and you're like, was that good? I don't know. Like, you're driving home thinking, I could have done that 10 different ways. Like, you're beating yourself up. It's not a fun process. Like, I wish there was a better process for auditioning. I still audition for some things. Some things I get straight off, or some things I audition for if it's, certain projects and certain directors. And it's still not a fun process for me. I think I try to tap into that and go, okay, I'm just going to make it about the work and make it fun. But you go in there and you feel like everyone's judging you, and it's hard. You know what I mean? So being on the other side, I try to break that elephant in the room and just make it more about the work. And I think that a lot of people that auditioned appreciated that. And even if they were nervous, I would make sure that, I would calm them down, get them comfortable, and then their second take would be better. You know what I mean? And that's my job as a director and as a producer, to try to get the best work out of somebody, And at the end of the day, there's no being on the other side of the audition process. You have to know that you can't take it personal, because there were a lot of actors that did a great job, but this one just had either, something different about the way they looked, or, there's sometimes the other producers are chiming in, and I really like this one, and it's between these two people, and there's compromise, and you have to go with this person. because there's a team of, cooks in the kitchen. So there's no, as an actor, you want to be like, I didn't get the job, I suck, I'm not a good actor. You know what I mean? But you can't have that mentality. You can't. My favorite story I tell is I was up for a film and I read for it, and the director, the part was for a kid who grew up in Queens, New York in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Queens, New York in the 80s. So I knew that world really well. And I thought, I'm perfect for this. And so I went and I read for it. And I was calling my agents and I said, how'd it go? And they said, yeah, the director just doesn't think you're right for it. And I was like, if I'm not right for that, I don't know what I could possibly be right for, because I grew up in that neighborhood and I know that neighborhood like the back of my hand. So I was like angry that I didn't get the role. And the movie fell apart and they didn't make it. Financing fell out. And a year later, a new director came on board. And they had financing, and he said, well, the old director had gone already, put people on tape. I'll just look at some tapes. And he saw my tape and they called me up and they said, hey, that movie you read for a year ago, they have a new director. He watched your tape. He thinks you're perfect for it. And he wants to offer you the role off the same tape that the other directors said I wasn't right for it. Mm-hmm. So it's so subjective, and I knew I was right for it. And that director, he said, when you did this one thing, I knew that you knew what you were talking about. I knew you knew that. And but it's the same performance, same tape, and two different people, judging it. So I ended up not being able to do that movie because I was on a TV series and I couldn't get out of the show to do the role. But the point is that it's just all subjective. So you can't take it personal.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk about your movie, but also all of your work across the industry. And it's been really great. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me into your home, and I had a blast. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you check out Hour of Lead when it comes out in September.